The gospel reading today comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 6, 27 through 38. And you might have heard this once or twice before, but I invite you to try and listen with fresh ears today. Jesus was teaching, and he said, "But I say to you that listen, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who begs from you. And if anyone takes away your goods, don't ask for them again. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. If you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much again. But love your enemies, do good, and lend, expecting nothing in return. Your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High. For God is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful just as your Creator is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back." May God add blessing to the reading and the hearing today. A nice, easy one to preach on for my week back. Super. But one of the things that I really like about our system as Presbyterians is that the pastor is actually not the head of the church. You saw the head of the church up here earlier. What we participated in today is the calling out of the gifts of the people within the community to work together, to lead the community, a part of the community, working on behalf of the community and leading the community. When leadership is a humble and discerning group, this can work exceedingly well. When it's not, when the leadership team is detached from the community and trying to exert power over the community, many of us know how badly wrong that can go. But it's not such a little secret now that I'm excited about this group. I'm excited about working with this leadership team. Their diversity of gifts, their willingness to work together and lead together to seek to follow God together. And this nicely leads right into my focus for today. Interestingly, the Bible study group 2 weeks ago was discussing the craziness that is the book of Genesis. If you haven't read Genesis for a while, go back, and it's wild and wacky. It's fascinating. We just kind of take it for granted every once in a while. Anyway, we're talking about it. And one of the things that we were aware of was quite interesting to me. We were reading the story of Joseph, the son of Jacob, and his coat of many colors that many of us have probably heard about and even seen in musicals, things like that. He was taken into slavery in Egypt, and Potiphar ended up making him head over his household. And God blessed the whole household with an abundance. Interesting. And it tapped into several other stories in those later chapters in Genesis where we heard similar things. God blessed the community around the particular person and not just the person, not just the individual. And that made me think of this passage of loving your enemies and do not judge and forgive as you've been forgiven in a whole new light. And I've preached on this passage many times and have never seen this part to it. This, I think, is a passage about communal abundance. Let me let that sink in. It's a passage about communal abundance. Not just the abundance of one person, not just one individual standing up in the light of God and shining the light for all to see. It's about a community coming alive and being blessed. And it's interesting to me because many of us have been taught the power of the individual, particularly in this country. The so-called American dream about the individual pulling usually himself up by the bootstraps and making it through hard work and determination. How many of you have heard this before? Okay. Many of us have grown up with this. It's about the individual doing the individual thing. But here in the Gospels, and yes, even way far back at the beginning of our scriptures, it seems like God is about something else. Something a little bit different. The abundance and blessing of a community. About communal abundance. And not just about the individual. So as we make our way through Black History Month, I don't know how many of us have ever heard of Fannie Lou Hamer, who was a prominent Mississippi civil rights leader who organized the Freedom Summer movement in 1964. She is credited with saying, "Nobody's free until everybody's free." Now, some of us have heard Martin Luther King Jr.'s statement that's very similar to that. No one is free until we're all free. And you might also remember Martin Luther King saying, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." We're caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. Now, what Fannie Lou Hamer and Martin Luther King Jr.'s statements have in common is that they're based on that understanding of our interconnectedness, of the community beyond the individual, the importance of all people in any system. And both of these leaders assert the truth that my well-being is inextricably connected to your well-being. We're always intertwined. It's not just about the individual, it's about the power, the interconnectedness of community. Here is something that our country seemingly is really very much missing. If it is about the individual, then there will always be an imbalance. Always. Because there's inequality between individuals, particularly in our system. If you turn on the news at any point this week, you would have noticed this. It's being screamed. Think of the passage today. This may be one of the hardest and most challenging teachings that Jesus offers. And we're tempted, I think, to scoff at it a bit because it's just too darn hard. It's almost ludicrous. Love your enemies? Okay, I know Jesus is all about love. I get it. But your enemies? Orange people in Washington, D.C., I'm supposed to love? Wow. Did that get your attention this morning? Did it wake you up this morning? I hope it did. Because it certainly is pushing the extreme of love. And if we don't quite get the challenge of it, I loved how Jesus circled back with the following up of, if you love people that love you, what credit is that to you? Wow. Sounds like he's saying, loving people who love you is kind of basic, but I'm trying to get you to the advanced level. You think you can do this love thing? Try this. Try this. And I'm also convinced, particularly for today's topic, that this is the only way to get to communal abundance. What we are currently doing in the U.S. and probably the Western world seems certainly broken. Seems like we're seeing that all the time. We're seeing what greed and power run amok gets us. We're seeing what happens when leaders are focused on individual power and not the well-being of the breadth of the community. Aren't we seeing division every day? Aren't we seeing xenophobia? Aren't we seeing genderism and heterosexism and racism all through the megaphone of the highest offices in our land? Hopefully none of us are shocked either. Unfortunately, this is kind of who the United States has been. It's been in our DNA. Now we're getting to see it really clearly. And when we hear these things, what do? All these words can cause fear. They can divide us. They can make us more scared of each other. They make us more isolated from one another. Everything that is the exact opposite of what love does. Am I right? Goes in a whole different direction. And we may not like it, and it may be really hard, but we are called to love even those that are difficult for us to love. Because it is the only way that the world is ever going to be made whole, made well. It's the only way that we're ever going to come to a deeper unity and the abundance that seemingly God desires. Or at least Jesus did in this teaching and in John when he prayed that those who would follow him would be one, as God and Christ are one. It's a powerful unity. How do we get there? There's only one main way, and that is love. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about love. Because somewhere Christianity, I think, has fallen into the trap of making love kind of mushy and love kind of easy or just feel good. And it's not. Any of you who have been in long-term relationships know that love has its really hard moments. It's a challenge. Love does not mean that you give people a pass for bad behavior. But it does mean that you stick in life with them, even in the face of bad behavior. Have to keep calling it out. Some would say that justice is love lived out in the world. If we want justice, we love people into a new way of being. Love also doesn't mean that you just allow yourself to get beat up. Oh, I love you, so I'm going to get whacked again. I'm going to get emotionally abused again. I'm going to put myself in a bad situation. No. That's not love. Love means you continue to desire the best for the person. Yes. Turn the other cheek that was mentioned today is actually a powerful act of subversive power. As is, do not withhold your shirt. And we need to understand that fully. It's not turn your other cheek so that you can get hit again. If somebody slaps you, it's not, just give them another cheek so you can get slapped again. No. There's a whole, and it would probably have to be for another sermon, but just for now, take it from me, that it's a powerful act of subversive power. It's standing up into something different that you can't get me. You can't intimidate me. I have a different power that I'm relying on than just your act of cruelty. But what I want to come back to is that this is also about communal abundance, about the whole community having enough, the whole community being respected and standing up and having the ability to stand up into our power. If everyone was really able to love their enemies, then they wouldn't be enemies for very long. Would they? We'd get to know them better. We would change them by our love. And that circle of love, that spider web of love, would soon engulf all of us. And we would all love and we would all be loved in the best case scenario. And in the midst of that, God would be known in a fullness and everyone would have enough and be enough. But to our detriment, we are all about the individual. And we remain about the individual. Now, I am guessing that there are plenty of skeptical voices in your heads right now that are jumping up and down and yelling that this is just not possible. You're off your rocker, Erik. This is just pie in the sky. It's a beautiful but very unreal vision. And you know what? You're actually probably right. And the reason that's right is because we haven't applied ourselves on a large enough scale. I would argue that we don't take this teaching seriously enough. And we let so many excuses and issues and past hurts and crud of our experiences that we've been taught get right in the way. Just go, no, don't even try. It's not even worth trying. It's hard. That love stuff, loving that person, that's hard. It's not worth it. And with that, God's vision fades from our eyes. God's vision fades from our hearts, and we are relegated to lives as individuals and people separated and fearful of one another. That is not the sacred community that Jesus envisioned or taught. But it certainly is the way of this world. Let's be clear on that. And it's certainly what we're seeing in the news multiple times a day. I have a question for you. Just a story. Did you hear about the young boy, Andre Howard, who's only 10 years old? And people are calling him a superhero because there was an airplane crash in Philadelphia, a real tragedy. But in the middle of it, debris was falling, and he was with his little sister. And he jumped, he pushed her out of the way so that she was safe, and he was knocked unconscious by the falling debris. He woke up, 10 years old. When he woke up from a coma, first question out of his mouth, is my sister okay? People, can we get there? Can this 10-year-old boy teach us about community? Can the first thing out of our mouths be, is Lynn okay? Is Patty okay? Is Nan okay? Is River okay? Their well-being. Because when we get there, think of the abundance that we find with each other. When we're able to love one another, think of the power in the room. Think of the wonder and joy in the room. That's communal abundance. So can we re-up, as the deacons and elders re-upped today, can we re-up to applying ourselves to this vision and teaching as best we can? Can we just see what a difference it would make in our families, in our community, in the world around us? Let's not just work for our own blessing, for our own advancement, for our own provision. May we be a community who works past all that to find the communal blessing that God longs to make known, not just here, not just for this church, but for our community around us, for the state, for the nation, for the world. God is longing to bless us, not just to be fabulous individuals, but to make sure that all God's fabulous people have enough and know that they are enough. May we be those who continually work to love all people and strengthen the community so that God's vision can be made known in us, through us, and for all those that we encounter today and all our days. Amen.